Hello everyone. Now we will be talking about ethics in user research. It is an extremely important component and it might also require certain permissions that you have to seek from your institution or from local organizations which give you that permission. If you do not have these permissions, you might not be able to publish your work openly. So let's look at it. We will be trying to understand what ethical principles govern user research. We will be also talking about certain international rules regarding the same, what applied informed consent protocols are, and what design studies are supposed to protect when they are collecting information from users. How do we navigate through this entire journey of ethical challenges with vulnerable populations and digital research methods? Also, we will be talking about how to assess the ethical risks and implement mitigation strategies which are in line with the regulatory framework. So, let's get started. So, why is this ethics so important in any user research? So, whenever you are trying to do any kind of user research, it involves real people, their personal information, their information regarding their behaviors, their emotions, their attitude towards things. So, the ethical principles come to protect these participants from any kind of harm or ensure that there is research integrity, that you are not using it for a purpose which was not disclosed to the user. So the ethics of this, the history of this ethics is as old as since 1947 when first time codes were set about it. Then in 1979 we had further revision to it, which is the Belmont report, and right now we have something which we call as the GDPR compliance. And in many of the European countries and the North America or South America, in many countries you actually cannot do any user research till you have the approval from appropriate ethical bodies. So let's look at it, how it goes ahead. There are 7 pillars to what we called as ethical user research. So the first one is about informed consent. So the participants must understand the purpose of your research, the procedures that you will be following to collect the data, to store the data, as well as to analyze the data and publish it in whatever forums you as a researcher want to publish it. The risks involved. So say for example, I am trying to do a research wherein I am trying to understand people's viewpoint to political ideologies, then you can really understand the risks involved if it goes into the hand of people with whom it should not go, because it is going with certain kind of identifying information. Similarly, if it is to do with your medical information or like your shopping behavior, it should not go to the wrong hands, because then somebody can use it for manipulative reasons. And you should always give your participants the option to withdraw, the right to withdraw at any time without having any repercussions or penalty. Next comes privacy and confidentiality. So what we are trying to mean over here is we collect only necessary data. So if it is not important to collect the person's name, please do not collect the person's name. You can give an identifier to the person, let's say person A or person B and so on. In case you need to get back to them in order to collect more information, only then in that case try to collect information which is related to email address, their mobile numbers and name. So collect only necessary data. If your experiment requires you to collect their exact age, let's say their age is 36 years, then only collect that data. In case you are okay with the data being on a range, so put yourself what is your age and you give a bracket 35 to 40, 40 to 45. If that kind of data is okay with you, your research, collect data in that particular format. Then whatever data you have collected, even in case you need to collect their mobile numbers and email addresses and physical addresses, which are identifying information, you should ensure that you store them in secured databases. And when you publish any of these data, you will not be publishing the data with these identifying information. You will codify the information. So you can codify the names as P1, P2, P3. You can codify the addresses in certain manners. Better if your research does not need to report their address, don't report their address. So secure all information against unauthorized access. Then comes data protection. So you have to comply with these regulations of GDPR, CCPA and local regulations in which whatever is there in the geography in which you are trying to conduct this research. Encrypt all the data that you store. Limit access of people, so only the researchers should have access to the data, and plan how will you be retaining this data for a long time and how will you be at the end of its requirement dispose of the data. Then is the vulnerable population. Now, let's say I'm trying to collect data of people who might get marginalized or might face certain kind of risk, or I'm trying to collect information from people who have low literacy, so they do not understand very well to what kind of consent they are giving. So I can put all of these kind of people as vulnerable population. So you need to adapt the methods in a manner that these participants who face disadvantage due to whatever be the reason, because of their age, because of certain disabilities, health conditions, income or social context, you have to have proper methods of how will you protect these vulnerable people from any risk or harm. Then comes cultural sensitivity. So wherever you are going to conduct the research, that particular culture might have certain norms and you have to follow and respect those norms when you are trying to conduct research over there. So these norms might be around how disclosure is supposed to happen, who is the authority figure over there, what is the norms related to personal spaces. So let's say you go to do certain kind of research in amongst a population where it is not considered very nice that opposite gender people go and interview or the participants. So in that case you have to follow the sensitivity, and the same gender people should go into the spaces and conduct the interviews or observational studies. In case you are trying to do research in a space where it is considered that you need to dress up in a certain manner, then it will be a good idea that you follow those kind of norms. So show the basic cultural sensitivity in different forms that will help you in respecting the people. Use culturally appropriate methods also, and also consult local co-researchers wherever it is required. So I heard of a very interesting case wherein a group of researchers came from a Western culture where it was normal to people have kids when the partners are co-living and there is no necessary requirement of a marriage. However, this particular culture people went to do a user research in another cultural context wherein it is totally impossible to imagine having children out of wedlock. Because these people were not culturally sensitive, so these people ended up asking questions which were considered very culturally inappropriate in this particular context. So we need to be very well acquainted with the local cultures, and it will be always very good that you also get in some local co-researchers who will help you in fine-tune your methodologies, your questions, so that you do not end up violating the cultural sensitivity of the place. Then comes no deception. Provide truthful and complete information. Never use pressure tactics. Do not do hidden observations or use any kind of manipulative research design. The last one is about fair compensation. So you should also consider how can you match the compensation to the time and effort your participants are providing to you. Disclose beforehand what the participants will get if they are going to get anything out of it. Avoid amounts that constitute undue inducement. So let's say I can go and tell everybody that okay, if you participate in my research, I will pay you 5,000 rupees today for 1 hour, because I can afford to do it and I know I can quickly finish my research by doing that. And that particular population, maybe after a whole day's hard work, might be earning only 700 rupees. So they will be overwhelmed. So they will stop doing their work on that day and come to you and do participate in your research. However, in this particular case, what you have done is you have biased them to provide you certain kind of information which they think should be provided now to you because you are giving them this huge amount of money. So if you are going to compensate them, then compensate them commensurate to the time and effort that they are going to provide, and declare what you are going to give to them. So let's look at these things in more detail now. So what do I mean by informed consent? What components and best practices should go when you are trying to take an informed consent? So you should include firstly what is the purpose and objective of your study. Then you have to include the methods and procedures that you will be using for data collection, data storage, data analysis, and then data reporting. Then you will have to also inform them about the expected duration and time commitment that you are expecting from your participant. You should also inform them about potential risks and benefits in case they are there. Then you have to talk about the data handling and storage plans, and you have to also tell them that they have full right to withdraw even when they are in between the research. Now, when you are trying to do all these, if your population is to whom you are delivering this, if they are mentally capable of understanding it in a written format and then give you consent, collect it in that way. But in case they are not capable of understanding it in a written format, you can also read out to them that these are the things, and you can take a verbal consent, and you are supposed to do a recording of the verbal consent in order to keep it as a proof that you have taken consent. However, you might also come across this situation where the population is not mentally capable enough to understand the implications of all that you said. So this is a person who has low literacy or certain kind of cognitive impairments because of which they are not able to do it. So then you have to either explain it in a manner that they can understand everything, or if it is a minor or somebody with cognitive impairments, then you will have to look at their guardians or parents, whoever is authorized on their behalf to give this particular consent. So the best practices that you have to use in this case is use plain and simple language. Do not use jargons. It can be written or verbal consent, and either of them, they should be documented. If you are going to do verbal, then you should have the document from which you are going to read it, so that you can ensure that you read the same thing to every participant. Never coerce your participants. Never pressurize them. Also, do not incentivize them in certain kind of agreements. Provide time for the questions. For minors, guardians consent plus the child has to also give the assent that yes, I want to participate in your research, and not that because my parents forced me, so I have to do it. Now let's come to privacy and confidentiality protocols. So the first and the foremost protocol over here is collect as less as you need. So only gather information that is directly relevant and necessary for the research objectives. Apply the principle of data minimization from the outset itself. So as I told you, do not collect name, do not collect age, do not collect exact age, do not collect the exact address, do not collect phone numbers, do not collect email IDs. Collect as much as it is necessary. If you don't need to know their exact income, do not collect their exact income. Let them put themselves into a bracket which says middle income, upper income, or let them put themselves in a bracket which says like 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. Even when I'm trying to put myself into that 1 lakh to 5 lakh, I am still giving some more concrete data than when I had put myself into middle income, lower income, and so on kind of data. Collect as much as is necessary. Do not collect too much of data. Always anonymize your data. Use pseudonyms, codes, or encryptions. Remove the names, addresses, photos, and identifiers. If you want to even store these things, store them in different data sets, so only you know how to combine them and others do not know how to combine them. So consider re-identification risk from combined point data. So you only know how to combine it. Now, how will I secure this storage? So, encrypted storage has to be used with limited access. So, only authorized researchers and personnel can access the information. Regular security audits need to be done. If you are trying to do cloud storage, then it must comply with the local data sovereignty laws, which says that so if you are doing your research in European Union, they will require you to store all the data in a cloud storage where the servers are located within their geography. So your local region will have these rules which cloud storage you can use in case you are planning to use them. Now coming to data protection and regulatory compliances. So if your jurisdiction where you are trying to do your research, as well as if your university is located over there or your company is located over there, if any of these is within the European Union, you will be following the GDPR guidelines. In case you are in the United States, then the guidelines are called as CCPA. In India, our guidelines is about the IT Act 2000. Again, in USA research context, you might also need to consider the Belmont report. So each one of them follows certain key principles. There are certain similarities and there are certain additional or less stuff from each one of them. So you need to understand them clearly and apply them. Here I have only put certain jurisdictions. Now you might have many other jurisdictions, let's say South Africa or China, and you have to study the appropriate frameworks which are applicable for you. Now coming to the next one, which is about researching vulnerable populations. So whenever you have these vulnerable populations, any population can become vulnerable. So let's say I am not vulnerable in a particular context, but if there is research which is collecting my health data, it can become a vulnerability in case it is misused by someone. People who have lower literacy levels, they are in general considered more vulnerable because they do not have full understanding of the entire informed consent they have. There can be political vulnerability, there can be social vulnerability, economic vulnerability, and so on. So you need to tailor the methods, and it will be a good idea if you are co-designing it with somebody from that particular community to understand the vulnerability to the right extent. So adapt your research procedures for accessibility. It is accessible to as many people as possible. Their comfort level when they are trying to answer the questions. So let's say I am going to ask certain flood victims to narrate their experiences during the last flood, and I know that they made so much of losses during that time that while answering this question they will have a lot of mental discomfort. I should try to figure out the right ways of asking that question or not asking that question. So I have to look at also the suitability of the question to the given cultural context. So involve participants in the planning the research itself so that you can ensure relevance, representation of the participants, and the representation of the population that you are going to interview, and respect the users right from the beginning. Then comes gatekeeper engagement and rights protection. So collaborate with these community leaders, advocates, caregivers, or specialists who have established trust with this particular community. Never exploit the vulnerability of a community. Ensure no additional harm, risk, or exposure is presented to your participants. Avoiding deception and fair compensation. So always have transparency and give fair incentives. So what we mean by transparency is provide truthful, complete information about the study. Never use pressure tactics or coercion to make them respond to you. If mild deception is necessary, let's say for example you want to do blind usability test, you should debrief as soon as the test is over so that people know immediately afterwards, and then you explain the rationale, like why did you do it, and still give them the option that if they did not like it, that they had participated in it, they should be able to tell that please delete my data. Then comes fair incentives. Match the compensation to the time, effort, and complexity involved. Disclose compensation before participation. Never do it as a post hoc surprise. Avoid amount so large that they constitute undue inducement. Now let's look at a particular case study. So I have a fitness watch project and I want to conduct a user research. Now as soon as I am talking about a fitness watch, it is going to collect health data. So health data is always extremely sensitive. And Fitness Watch collects really sensitive health data, which can be classifiers of your health like heart rate, your sleep patterns, your activity data, and they are very sensitive and personal health information. If it is connected with your identity, they become more sensitive. So you should have very good end-to-end encryption. All the participants that you collect the data from, it should be anonymized data, and you should have a strict 6-month data retention policy with secure deletion. Now let's say I want to do the same experiment with elderly participants. So I need to ensure their protection. So if this elderly population is something that you're targeting quite old population and you expect that there is a cognitive decline also possible amongst them, then you have to think of simplifying the consent form because they might also have a difficulty of reading. You should also print this into large font size because there is so much of small print and they might just say, okay, I agree to it, because they do not understand the full implications of collecting the data and giving their data without understanding how it is going to be used. So also it will be a good idea, if you are trying to collect data, use the language that the participant is most comfortable with in understanding, in reading. You should also use extended session times with breaks for them. Family members' accompaniment can be an option for them. After the session is done, you should have a post-session debriefing to ensure that they understood full implications of the research and how the data that you collected will be used. Cultural adaptation. Now let's say you want to conduct this research across urban Bangalore and rural Assam. Now in both these settings, there is a difference on how people understand rules of privacy, how cultural factors change between these two different locations. So you should always have local co-researchers to understand the cultural mediation. The consent processes need to be adapted to the local norms. And in case, because you are collecting health data, if your society requires that data collection has to be gender matched with the researcher and the participant, follow those norms. Now ethical outcomes. So let's say I am conducting this particular research in IIT Guwahati and there is medical data involved. So I will take the approval of the required body within the institute to conduct this particular session. So I will give them all the information, they will scan through it and they will give me the permission if everything is in place. So the key takeaways from this ethics lecture that you can take are this: ethics are foundational. They are not something that you should consider whether I should do it or not do it. You should always follow it. It is not just compliance, it is also something that builds trust with the participants. It ensures research integrity and it protects your participants' rights. Informed consent is the first thing that you have to do. So always obtain clear voluntary consent using plain language. So let's say, for example, you have a small design project for which you want to collect some information from some participants, and it is in a geography where you do not require to apply to a compliance body who approves your research. Even in that case also, you should always have a informed consent form which you should read out to your participant, take their informed consent and keep that record with you that I had collected informed consent. Participants must understand the purpose, risk and their rights to withdraw. Protect the privacy always. Never ever disclose the identity. Even if you are using the photographs of people using something, you should always blur their faces so that their identity is not visible. If your research is with minors, you have to be more careful about it. Also, collect only essential data, anonymize all your records, use encryption and set clear retention policies to safeguard participant information. Adapt for vulnerability. So if you have a vulnerable population, then tailor the methods for the vulnerable group. Avoid deception in any form. Ensure fair compensation and involve participants in the research design. So here are some of the key references if you are interested in more reading in this particular area. And this brings us to the end of this particular week. We will have one more lecture in this week which will basically summarize all that we did in this particular week. See you.